At some point in your life, you're going to need a lawyer. Lawyer Talk, where we talk to Atlanta's top lawyers about questions important to you. Here's Adam Goldfein.
It's Adam Goldfein. Thank you so much for joining me on Lawyer Talk. We are excited to be here with Todd Henningsen, who is the lead partner of the Henningsen Injury Attorney firm. Did I get it right?
You did, absolutely.
Todd, by the way, thank you very much for coming down. Excited to have you here because this is an opportunity really to help everybody in Atlanta and in the metro area as far as Georgia with understanding all the legal information that they need. And very often when somebody is injured, they don't know where to turn because they don't plan on getting injured.
Right.
Right? So
absolutely.
If I'm going to go buy a house, I know I need a real estate attorney.
Right.
If I'm going to start a business or go bankrupt, I know I see it coming.
Right.
I had my frosted flakes in the morning, and I didn't know that somebody was going to rear end me, or I was going to slip at work.
Sure.
Or a dog was going to bite me, or a gunshot wound, or something, right?
Absolutely.
So all sorts of crazy scenarios, and people very often feel like, I don't need an attorney.
Right.
Do they?
Absolutely. I mean, well, what I tell people is, honestly, give me a call. And I will give you an honest opinion as to whether or not you need an attorney on these cases. But I have so many times where people come to me and say, the insurance company made this offer, $500, $1,000. And they'll end up being my client, and we're getting 6, 7, 8, 9 times that amount, which means ultimately more money for them, and they didn't have to do anything different. Right. And, in a situation where you've become injured and you're a victim, you just don't know where to get honest legal advice.
Yeah, and I think that when you break it down, I think what individuals don't understand is there are going to be issues of liability.
Correct.
Who is at fault, right? And the law in Georgia is interesting because unless that's proven that the other party was more at fault than you, what happens?
You lose.
You lose.
Right. Yeah.
So if the other side says, well, you were 51% at fault, and think about that. There's an auto accident. You don't have somebody who helps you preserve the evidence or make your claim. Even though the other party was at fault, you may not get anything. So liability is one of the issues I want to talk to you about.
Absolutely.
Okay. I also want to talk to you about damages because people will ask, to your point, what's my case worth? Well, there are lots of different types of damages, right?
Sure.
So can you walk me through all of that?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then the other thing is I can get a verdict. Or I can tell my son, I have a 10-year-old, for example, I say, here, write me out a check for $10 million. The check he writes in crayon is non-cashable, okay? So what we got to make sure is that we can collect. And so really, liability, damages, and collectability, right?
Correct.
Okay, so let's walk through it with everybody. You are watching Lawyer Talk. This is where you get the information you always wanted to know from Atlanta's top lawyers. I'm talking with Todd Henningsen, who is one of the top personal injury lawyers in Atlanta. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on CW69.
There are over 2,400 Georgians involved in car wrecks every day. Over 100,000 Georgians are injured on the job each year. Who's going to protect your interests when an accident happens? Not the insurance company. At Henningsen Injury Attorneys, we're here to help. You didn't choose to be injured, but you do have a choice in who fights for you. You deserve an experienced attorney with a proven track record of success. If you have questions or want to understand the value of your case or simply need a second legal opinion, call us right now.
Hi everyone, I am Shannon Wiseman inviting you to join me on the A-List. It's the only show that goes all across Atlanta. It's got the hottest places to be, coolest things that you need to see. So join me each week on the A-List on CW69.
Hey, it's Adam Goldfein reminding you to stay tuned after the football game. I've got a very special auto scoop on CW69 helping you with your credit. This is a show you're absolutely not going to want to miss. It's only here on CW69, so make sure to stay tuned for it. I'm Adam Goldfein. Welcome back to Lawyer Talk. I'm here with Todd Henningsen, one of Atlanta's top personal injury lawyers, trying to bring you the information that you need. Now, Todd brought up an excellent question that most people ask. First off, how much is my case worth? One of the other questions we brought up in the opening segment is, do I need an attorney? And we are going to try to help you understand the value of your case if you've been injured and whether or not you actually need an attorney, and who really better to get the information from than have you confess and spill it all right out.
That's right. Give all the secrets.
All right, so let's start with just a general injury. When can somebody say, hey, I actually might be entitled to damages. Like, explain to me negligence or the whole idea behind personal injury law.
Sure. As we were talking about, you've got liability, damages, and then we're looking really at coverage, right?
Okay.
How do we pay the bill? So let's talk about liability.
Right.
90% of what I deal with is negligence, okay? And negligence is failure to use reasonable care. That's how we lawyers say it, failure to use reasonable care. Now let me just give you a quick example.
Right.
Most of them are road wreck cases, car accidents, okay? Did the other driver hit you from behind? That's the classic example of negligence.
So the other person had a responsibility to drive safely.
Correct.
And they breached that responsibility.
Correctly.
Because of that, I was injured.
Right.
And give me my money.
That's, in law school, they teach it duty, breach of duty, causation, and damages.
Okay.
Right.
And so you walk through those 4 steps to make your case.
Correct.
Okay. So this is the same, though, if we have a situation that I slipped in the grocery store.
Correct.
Or maybe that I was injured by some sort of product.
Right.
Or by a person, or if somebody punches me, or any type of injury.
Right. Well, if a punch would be an intentional act, which would be different than negligence. But
Right.
sure.
But still, I could still go to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If Dave breaks my nose, can I go to you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sure.
So, look, if you've been hurt, that's really the first litmus test, right? So we're looking for a situation. Now, does there have to be blood?
No.
Do I have to have broken bones?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, so because someone might say, and I'm going to give you a couple of the fast scenarios, right?
Right.
All right. I hear it all the time with car accident cases. Look, Todd, there wasn't a lot of damage to the car.
Right.
How could there have been a lot of damage to the person? What are you talking about?
Well, I mean, does a doctor in the emergency room, does he come over and does he say, let me see the helmet of the football player that was injured? I mean, when you go, we've talked about this, a carton of eggs, right? You go to the store, you go buy your carton of eggs, you open them up, and you get home, you open it up, and you see one of the eggs is cracked. Well, the carton doesn't look damaged. Look, car accidents, even with minor amounts of property damage, cause major injuries. You have to think that, the cervical spine, the discs, all of that can be very fragile, and those forces exerted in a car accident, even at a low speed, can herniate a disc, can bulge a disc.
Now, let me ask you, what if you have a person that's older or has a bad back and they do get hurt?
Sure.
I mean, we're not all the same. I'm not 18 anymore, right? And so I would take a hit a little differently than an 18-year-old,
right.
Or maybe a 68-year-old. Everybody's different.
Right.
Okay. So wouldn't it be fair to say one of the first things is if you have been involved in an accident, the most important thing that we can tell you is pick up the phone, call the number on the screen, and speak to somebody. And when they do, and let's just say somebody picks up the phone and says, Todd, I want to talk to you about my situation. Do you charge anything for that call?
Absolutely not. You can come into my office, we can sit down and talk, and there is no fee for any consultation. I am happy to talk to you.
All right. Now, if I was involved in an auto accident, the law in Georgia is I've got to move my car out of the roadway. Let's say it's on the highway. I got to push it aside. But one of the challenges that an attorney would have would be the preservation of the evidence, of establishing that case. What are some of the 1 or 2 mistakes or tips that you would give people who are watching that might be involved in an accident?
Well, if you're capable and you are not injured to the extent that you are knocked unconscious, get some witnesses.
Okay.
I mean, people will most of the time stop and come up to you, get their information, get a business card, get their phone number, because many times a police officer has a lot of different things and moving parts going on. They may not get that witness information. I had a case recently where we had one witness and then we were missing another one. Well, it was a small town and they happened to see each other at the grocery store, and she said, how are you doing from that incident that happened? And she said, oh, I didn't know you saw it. Well, guess what? That changed the whole case around. It went from a zero offer to a lot of money.
Well, and that's really funny because the interesting thing is the offers that you're going to receive, and this is the most common thing that people see, the initial offer versus the result. Would you say that people are routinely offered less than they would get if they had an attorney?
Absolutely, 100%.
Bar none.
Yes.
Do you ever get them double their original offer?
Absolutely.
Triple?
Yes.
4 times?
Yes.
10 times?
Yes.
You have a case where you've gotten somebody 10 times the initial offer?
Yes. Yes.
So the challenge really to me is that if you're sitting home negotiating with yourself or feeling guilty about not talking to somebody, because understand, the insurance company is not going to pay you just for the sake of paying you. If you got more money, it's because you had more damage, you needed more medical care, you were out of work longer. You're entitled to that, right?
And let me say this, they're called adjusters, right? They're called insurance adjusters. I have never, ever seen them adjust the claim upwards, right?
Right.
They're not going to say, well, this claim is really worth 10. I'm going to give you 15,000.
So that really begs the question, right? So let's talk about damages, right? So what I want you to do is, everyone sitting home, they may only think they're entitled to, let's say, their medical bill or their deductible, okay? I want to go through all the damages, all the money that you're entitled to. If you have been damaged, this is the show for you. We're talking to one of Atlanta's top attorneys, Todd Henningsen. If you've got a personal injury claim, he is the guy you've got to talk to.
There are over 2,400 Georgians involved in car wrecks every day. Over 100,000 Georgians are injured on the job each year. Who's going to protect your interests when an accident happens? Not the insurance company. At Henningsen Injury Attorneys, we're here to help. You didn't choose to be injured, but you do have a choice in who fights for you. You deserve an experienced attorney with a proven track record of success. If you have questions or want to understand the value of your case, or simply need a second legal opinion, call us right now.
Hi everyone, I am Shannon Wiseman, inviting you to join me on the A-List. It's the only show that goes all across Atlanta. It's got the hottest places to be, coolest things that you need to see. So join me each week on the A-List on CW69.
Hey, it's Adam Goldfein reminding you to stay tuned after the football game. I've got a very special auto scoop on CW69 helping you with your credit. This is a show you're absolutely not going to want to miss. It's only here on CW69, so make sure to stay tuned for it. Welcome back to Lawyer Talk. I'm Adam Goldfein, and we are talking with Todd Henningsen, one of Atlanta's top personal injury attorneys, trying to bring you the information that you need if you have been damaged, if you've suffered harm. Maybe you were driving a car and you had your kids in the car, you and your children, or you and your spouse. There could be multiple claims for an individual's negligent act, and you need protection. It's very, very important. There are a lot of people out there who, for whatever reason, feel like they shouldn't go to an attorney, or they delay. And delay is probably one of the key killers of recovering damages.
Absolutely. Number one problem I see in every
Number
single
one
case.
problem.
Yes.
So the advice that we're going to give people is, if you've been injured, you've been in an auto accident, pick up the phone, okay? I don't want to hear any nonsense. I don't want to hear a reason why you're not doing it. I simply want you to have a free, no-charge consultation with Todd, and you're going to find out whether you need to pursue it. You're going to tell him yes or no.
Right, absolutely.
And then secondly, and more importantly, what is the value of my claim? Meaning, what am I entitled to from damages, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw them at you, all right?
Okay.
Ready?
I am ready.
You
Let's
do this
it.
all day.
Yes.
Okay, let's take the car wreck.
Okay.
Okay, get into a car wreck. Medical bills, am I entitled to them?
Absolutely.
What are we looking at?
But here's the rub with medical bills.
Okay.
Everybody, if you have health insurance, people will say, well, I should get my copay back. So they'll be negotiating with the insurance company on their own, saying, and the insurance company is happy to let you
The
sit there.
$500 or whatever the copay is.
But the bill was $1,000 or $2,000.
What if it was $10,000?
It doesn't matter the amount.
Okay.
You are entitled to the full amount of what the medical care provider billed.
Even if, wait a minute, so Aetna, my medical, pays $10,000 for my hospital visit.
Correct.
So I now have $10,000 in bills, and it was paid.
Correct.
I can go sue the guy that hit me?
Correct.
And get my $10,000.
Correct.
And you haven't picked up the phone yet and called Todd?
Right. I mean,
so medical bills.
Medical bills. Lost wages.
Okay, what happens there? Is it the time I'm out of work, or?
Just get a doctor. If the doctor is keeping you out of work, you are entitled to that time.
In addition, are we stacking?
Yes, we're stacking.
So it's not one or the other?
Right.
Okay. So we got medical bills, I have lost wages.
Right.
Okay. What if, and I got to ask this because I don't know, I'm in pain. All right? I mean, it hurts to move. It's one thing to get the chiropractic care or the medical care that I need, or the drugs that I need. What about my pain and suffering? Can I be compensated for that?
Sure. And that's where I think that it becomes, as attorneys, there's more of an art to that. Okay. So we know we have concrete numbers, right? Medical bills, lost wages, maybe future medical bills, right?
Okay, yeah.
I mean, maybe you have something that you need a surgery in the future.
And you're going to get me that money now?
Sure.
Okay.
Right, because you're entitled to be compensated for anything that was caused by the wreck.
Okay, I think a lot of people are confused, and they think maybe it's just their car deductible, like you said, or their medical deductible, and that the problem is now theirs.
Right. No,
it's not.
Not at all. Well, guess what happens though if you just accept that small sum from the insurance company? Guess who comes knocking on your door? Well, it's going to be the insurance company that paid for your medical bills. The medical
wanting
insurance.
the money back?
Yeah, it's called subrogation.
Wow.
So that gets really complicated for everybody, and that's why they really need a lawyer.
So you're really, on the one hand, making sure they get as much as they should, and on the other hand, keeping all the other creditors and other people who have their hand out at bay.
Absolutely.
Have there ever been times where, let's say, the medical bills have been so high that you've had to negotiate them down so the individual could get more money?
Yes. Yes. I mean, my job is really twofold in that regard. We have got to get the offer as high as we can possibly get the offer, and then we can get everybody else who is entitled to get money out of that claim to take less.
Okay, so the individual gets more.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have lost wages.
Yes.
You've got medical bills.
Right.
You have pain and suffering. What about punitive damages? I mean, the person, after all, was a bad guy. How do I get extra? How do I punish him? Give me one or two fast scenarios.
So what we were talking about was compensatory damages first, right?
Okay.
That's to compensate you for your injury and what you've been through.
All right.
Punitive damages are to punish the behavior of the offending party. Classic example is drunk driving, or a hit and run is another example where you could have punitive damage, if you can locate the individual who fled the scene.
All right.
I represented a police officer who really, his injuries were not super significant. I mean, he had about $3,000 in medical bills. We were able to recover $50,000 for him.
How?
Punitive damages. He was hit by a drunk driver. Another attorney turned that case down because he didn't think that it was something that he should pursue.
You're kidding.
No.
So somebody's been hit by a drunk driver, pick up the phone. Somebody hit and run, pick up the phone. I know the other one is racing, right?
Oh, sure, racing,
You have kids racing on the highway that cause an accident, pick up the phone. There are all these little nuances that people don't know. I'll give you a funny one. I'll throw this one at you. Loss of consortium.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, that is for your spouse, for loss of what we call companionship, services, all of these arcane rules really now that we talk about. But really, it's about the relationship you would have with your spouse.
And the intimate relationship.
Sure.
In all seriousness.
Yes.
I mean, the reality is, if I have back trouble and I can't have an intimate relationship with my wife is legally entitled to monetary damages. You may not know that unless you had an attorney lining it up and saying, we can get you all this money, and when you stack it together, it is a huge amount. And that's why you've got to pick up the phone and you've got to find out how much your case is worth. Every case is individual, they're unique, they're fact specific. Pick up the phone right now, call Todd, free consultation, but you've got to act.
There are over 2,400 Georgians involved in car wrecks every day. Over 100,000 Georgians are injured on the job each year. Who's going to protect your interests when an accident happens? Not the insurance company. At Henningsen Injury Attorneys, we're here to help. You didn't choose to be injured, but you do have a choice in who fights for you. You deserve an experienced attorney with a proven track record of success. If you have questions or want to understand the value of your case, or simply need a second legal opinion, call us right now.
Hi everyone, I am Shannon Wiseman, inviting you to join me on the A-List. It's the only show that goes all across Atlanta. It's got the hottest places to be, coolest things that you need to see. So join me each week on the A-List on CW69.
Hey, it's Adam Goldfein reminding you to stay tuned after the football game. I've got a very special auto scoop on CW69 helping you with your credit. This is a show you're absolutely not going to want to miss. It's only here on CW69, so make sure to stay tuned for it. Welcome back to Lawyer Talk. I'm Adam Goldfein. I'm here with Todd Henningsen, who is one of Atlanta's top personal injury attorneys. Now look, motorcycle accidents, car accidents, truck cases, slip and falls, worker comp, right? You get hurt at work, you might have a claim. You might have two claims.
Give us a call, yeah.
Right? And so we've talked about the fact that first there's a question of liability, right? Of making sure that we establish that the other party was at fault. And that's a lot of what Todd will do. I mean, he's going to make sure that your evidence in your case is amassed so you make the most money. Then the second piece you told us about was damages.
Right.
How much?
Right.
Okay, so one thing that they're responsible. Now, how much do they have to pay
And
me?
it's typically injuries, right? We think
Right.
damages, injuries.
Okay, so we've got that. Now, here's the question for you. If my son writes me a check for the $1 million in crayon,
Right.
of what value is that?
Zero.
Right. So explain to me, the coverage issue and what happens. Like, for example, you brought up in the last segment punitive damages and driving while intoxicated, driving under the influence.
Right.
There was a recent case here in Atlanta, very high-profile case of an attorney who was a repetitive drinker. He had a drinking problem, and he had been arrested for it numerous times. Yep. He hit a taxi cab, killing an individual and critically injuring 2 people.
Yes.
You are familiar with it?
Very familiar.
How come?
Unfortunately, I'm too familiar. Well, I was honored to represent the taxi cab driver. Okay. The victim, one of the victims, and this is a travesty for all of the people that were involved. But on paper, when we got that case, we looked at it and we thought, okay, this is a strong case. We have grievous injuries, catastrophic injuries. We have a person driving a car who was highly intoxicated. He's a repeat drunk driver. The sky's the limit as to what you would think you could get.
Right, but what was the fly in the ointment? What happened?
There was no insurance coverage. There was 0 on his vehicle that he was driving because he was driving a rental car.
So if somebody else was looking at that case, or they were looking at it on their own, or thought I can handle this on my own, even though you have these catastrophic damages, big numbers,
sure,
you can't cash the check.
Right.
There's no money.
Absolutely.
So what'd you do?
We got very creative. What we did a lot of investigation into that case, and we realized that his ex-wife had rented him that vehicle. And so we filed a suit against her for what's called negligent entrustment. And she denied that she had any knowledge of any drinking or anything like that. And so, very nuanced issue, but we were able to establish it through really some great, really just gumshoe footwork. Wow. We got out there and we found a piece of paper that implicated exactly what we needed at the deposition, and they turned around and we got the insurance company to pay. An insurance company. Still wasn't enough money. It was a lot, but it still wasn't enough for what he went through.
Okay, so the reality is that coverage and you finding policies, sometimes stacking policies, right?
Yes. Oh.
What does that mean?
Stacking is where you can take different types of policies and put them together to aggregate it and get more.
Okay, so maybe situations of underinsured, or uninsured motorist coverage, you can use that.
Well, a lot of people don't realize that if a resident relative, we say, so somebody who lives in the house and is a relative of the person can get access to that insurance.
Yeah, the homeowner's policy, how about that?
Homeowner's policy, we can absolutely look at that.
Maybe there's an umbrella policy.
Umbrella?
Right, so all these things that you've got to think about, because look, the job, he's got a 3-part job, as he's explained. We've got to establish that the other party was at fault, we've got to determine how much you're entitled to, and that 3, we've got to go get the money. Right? The old show me the money, right?
Right.
Give me the money.
And it really comes to play in these catastrophic cases. I have a client who was on a motorcycle and he gets hit. Well, I mean, he has $200,000 in medical bills. What our job at that point is to find the insurance coverage, and it can be very, very complicated.
Right.
So you kind of parse through it. So you look first at the other driver's policy, right?
Okay.
That's liability coverage. That's what you're required to have, the minimum, $25,000 in the state of Georgia.
Right.
Then you look at your own policy. Right. Uninsured motorist or underinsured motorist. That protects you if the other driver hits you and doesn't have enough coverage.
Okay.
All right? And then you can look at something called medical expense coverage, which is kind of like a no-fault health insurance policy.
Like your med pay.
Yes.
In your policy.
Right.
Which could be up to, what, $50,000?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you put all these things together, that would be the sort of advice you'd be giving people on how to structure their claim.
Right. You are coordinating all of the benefits together to maximize the value.
How soon should somebody call you? Should they wait? Should they go to the doctor? I mean, how much time between the time of impact and the phone call?
Immediately. I mean, I would rather them get the medical treatment that they need, obviously.
Right.
But as soon as they walk out of the doctor's office.
Absolutely, as soon as possible.
Absolutely.
Should someone have guilt and say, well, you know, I feel okay, or I don't want to make a big deal out of this, it will be fine, and push it off?
The insurance company expects you to make a claim. I mean, let's talk about that. We're talking about insurance money. We're not talking about jumping the gun and filing a lawsuit right away. Okay. We will negotiate, and I am there to advise you and to tell you, to guide you through this process. You tell me, essentially what to do.
Right.
I mean,
you're the sword. You can either take it out or leave it in the sheath, right?
And we can if you want to file a lawsuit, we will do it, and we'll go after it, and we'll be aggressive. But some people don't. Some people want a fair, honest, reasonable settlement, but they don't want to have to go to court, and that's where we can come in too.
Yeah. Well, I think the key is really understanding what your rights are, what you're entitled to, and you have to have expert advice. Look, it's the old saying, doctors don't operate on themselves, okay? Lawyers don't represent themselves. Why? You need an expert who can look at the facts clearly, can do all the legwork, is not emotionally involved. You cannot do this yourself.
And Adam, we'll meet you anywhere. We'll come to your house. Yeah, absolutely.
So you make it easy.
Absolutely.
And that consultation, by the way, again, is no charge. You have to find out the facts so you can make an informed decision. After all, how do you know whether or not you have nothing or you have something? And there are lots of times, and we'll do this really fast, have you ever seen a situation where the person thought they had nothing and it ended up being tremendous? In 10 seconds, give me a fast story.
Sure. A person came into our office, their boyfriend had wrecked the car, and they didn't think they had any insurance. It was a $100,000 claim.
Just like that.
Boom.
Okay, so what are you waiting for? Pick up the phone.